Hello and welcome to the entire plot of the Tandem Read by Sarah J. Maas. Today we're going to be covering Tower of Dawn chapter 18 through 22 and Empire of Storms chapters 24 and 25, although not in that order. We are covering the entire Tandem Read in chronological order. Let's kick off episode 7 with Tower of Dawn chapter 18, and this is going to be in Yrene's POV because she is absolutely freaking out right now. Because if you remember how we ended off episode 6 is that Chaol is moving his toes. This is the first sign that any and all of the torture that they've been putting themselves through in these healing sessions is actually paying off. We're gonna jump forward to later that day. Yrene is actually hanging out with Hassar, and she is in a really good mood naturally because, like I said before, the healing is finally paying off. Hassar does make some silly little comments about how jealous she is because Chaol is taking up all of her time these days. And Hassar basically makes a comment about like, what if you and Chaol were something more than just healer and patient, and Yrene just says she's keeping it professional and have no fear, there's no chance of that even maybe happening. Hassar then makes an even crazier comment and says that if she's jealous of all the time that Yrene is spending with Chaol, she can only imagine how Caution is feeling. Now remember, this is the brother that has had a huge crush on Yrene, has even confessed his love, and she has friend-zoned him multiple times. So Yrene actually gets on Hassar, and she's like, yeah, no thanks to you, because you literally encourage him all the time, even though you know I'm not interested in him like that. But then Yrene, she's so gutsy, especially with Hassar, it's kind of insane, but she's like, oh, so you mean to tell me that if I married Caution and me and Caution had children, that if you became the Kagan, you wouldn't have all three of us murdered? And Hassar thinks about it, and then she's like, yeah, that's a good point. So she doesn't really like confirm or deny it, but she definitely does not deny it. That also, I think, tells you a lot about Hassar. The conversation then shifts to the attack on the Torre and the healer who was killed, and Hassar actually suggests that it's an Aelin spy. So she makes a bunch of little comments here and there throughout the entirety of the conversation that everything started happening when Chaol and Nesrin got here. So Hassar basically thinks that they might be a big part of the problem and maybe they don't have the best intentions for being here. Yrene, however, shuts that down immediately, and she just kind of explains like, they need us right now, like why would they come attack us if they actually need our help right now? Then Hassar points to the maps in front of them. So this entire time Yrene has been with Hassar in her rooms and there's been maps everywhere, and it's like one of those like war tables where it's like the maps and all of the like ships and the little figures all over the maps, like, you know, those things you see it in all the movies. Well, they have one of those, okay, in the center of the room, and Hassar points it out to Yrene, who Yrene noticed it, but she was like, I don't really know how to read these, and I don't know what a bunch of these little figurines even mean anyways. So Hassar starts explaining it to her, and she starts pointing out like all of the big names in this war, you could say, the Southern Continent, Maeve, Erewhon, all of them. And then she says, but the funny thing is that I have this little Aelin figurine, but I have no idea where to put it because I have no idea where Aelin is. So why don't you scurry on over to Chaol and get him to tell you where Aelin is? Yrene clearly really doesn't want to do this, so she starts questioning Hassar, and Hassar, whether or not this is true or not, she says that she wants to get more information so she can know what side she would potentially be on, although Yrene does not trust this. And then Hassar starts throwing nice, lovely gowns at her and saying like, hey, I want you to wear one of these really nice gowns to the feast tonight, where you're going to get the information from Chaol. Yrene clearly is like, I'll think about it, but she's definitely leaning towards no. When Hassar says, oh, don't think I don't know that you want to leave and go aid in this war in the Northern Continent. I know you're trying to leave the Southern Continent. I know once Chaol is healed, you plan to go with him. But do know that as the princess of the Khaganate, I can keep you from leaving this continent if I so choose. So Hassar, what a lovely friend. She's going as far as to threaten Yrene for this information. So all of that bothers me. And something too is I feel like a lot of people are like easy to dismiss Rhaenyra in all of this. They're like, oh, well, Hassar's girlfriend is so sweet and so kind and she kind of balances Hassar out. She is present for like this entire conversation. Like, this is clearly a very immoral thing she's asking Yrene to do, and threatening someone who's supposed to be her best friend is clearly immoral. So I don't think people can say that Rhaenyra is like better than Hassar. Like, she is complacent in everything Hassar does. Anyways, moving on. Tower of Dawn chapter 19. This is going to be in Chaol's POV as he just continues to wiggle his toes in his shoes. He is with Nesryn after this appointment. However, he does not tell Nesryn that he is feeling in his toes, which is very odd and interesting, but Chaol has convinced himself it is because he doesn't want to get her hopes up because it might just stop at his toes. Whether or not that is true, we will have to just wait and find out, but that is definitely what he is telling himself. What he does tell Yrene, however, is that he wants to postpone meeting her family. He was supposed to go meet her family soon now that he can ride on horseback, and he says that he wants to put this off because he's making a lot of progress with Yrene. So he's not telling her exactly what this progress is, but he's just saying, I'm hopeful and I really don't want to put off any of my progress. Okay. Nesryn obviously says it's totally fine, but when Chaol goes to give her a smooch, realizes that her heart is not in it, and he realizes that maybe she doesn't believe him. Or maybe not that she doesn't believe him, but that she's like just disappointed in his decisions. And he also doesn't really blame her because if you think about it, like he's kind of been miserable to be around these past couple weeks. In my opinion, rightly so. Like he has gone through a lot. And he should have time to mourn that, but he definitely could have been a little bit better to Nesryn for sure. So he acknowledges that, and he's like, you know what, like once I'm all healed up, like I will make sure to give Nesryn the adventure of a lifetime. After all, I promised her at the end of Queen of Shadows that I would give her the adventure of a lifetime in the southern continent. It is the next morning. He and Yrene healed for 3 hours, sipped some tea to recover from the healing session, and then continued to work out to keep his muscles from breaking down. And now it is time for dinner, okay? So he's had a very long packed day. And tonight he is also going to request again an audience with a cognate, because for some reason he thinks he's going to have better luck this time. However, when he gets to dinner, the cognate doesn't even show up. Flash forward to the next morning. We are flying through these next couple days because we really want to get to the feast because that's when all the crazy stuff goes down. So the next morning, Chaol wakes up and he has another session with Yrene, and he's so excited for this session that Nesryn starts to be suspicious as to what is getting into him. However, she is also very excited because she plans to spend another day with Sartok. If there are red flags going up in your brain right now, maybe there should be, okay? Like a little bit, like on both ends here, okay? Both of them are going to make the most of today because the feast, this big feast that Hassar wants Yrene to spy on Chaol for her at, is tomorrow, okay? So today's like the last big day to get all this stuff done. So a little bit about this feast. It is a holiday meant to celebrate the sea goddess Tahom. There's a gathering at the sea at sunrise, and then there's a big feast at the palace at sundown. If you remember, in the very first book, Throne of Glass, Chaol has never really cared for holidays, but as he is walking through the palace and he is seeing, like, how, not even just the palace actually, but even the city, like everyone is so festive, everyone is pouring their heart and their energy into this holiday, and he's starting to like feel the electricity in the air and thinking like, oh, maybe holidays actually can be fun. Maybe they are exciting. Okay, Chaol. So Chaol is enjoying the absolute electricity in the environment on his way to the stables because apparently during his session with Yrene yesterday, she mentioned something about him getting on horseback again today. So he gets to the stables. Unfortunately, he cannot find Yrene, so he decides to get some help from a guard to get on the horse. Now, this is a guard that he saw talking with Yrene the last time he got on the horse. So this guard's name is Shen. We will see Shen a couple times. All we know is that he is friendly with Yrene and that he is often near the barracks and in the stables. We'll learn more about Shen later though, don't worry. So Chaol is on this horse for an hour and a half, and Yrene is still not there, so he decides to go out on his own on the horse and start walking in the path of the Tor in hopes that he will run into her on the way there. But he gets all the way to the Tor courtyard and he never ran into Yrene. So he asked the guards if she's left the Tor yet, because remember, there's guards everywhere and no one gets in or out without the guards knowing about it. However, they say they haven't seen Yrene at all today. Hafitzia sees Chaol on the horse in the courtyard and she comes down to let him know that Yrene has been sleeping. Treating Chaol has been taking a huge toll on Yrene, because if you think about it, like, it's really intense healing, and like any sort of magic, there does have to be some sort of balance in the energy, kind of like the well analogy that we often use with Aelin's magic. It's a similar idea for Yrene. So Hafitzia suggests that he gives her the entire day to sleep. And then Chaol, seeing that Hafitzia has a bag and is planning to go out, offers to escort her to her location. Let's jump to Yrene's POV, because she just woke up from a 36-hour nap. Man, I wish. Can you imagine? I feel like people like to joke about like a what year is it kind of nap, like when you wake up and you're so out of it. Napping for 36 hours is insane. I don't even think that constitutes as a nap anymore. So she goes down to the courtyard where she sees Chaol. Apparently, he came back to the courtyard after escorting Hafitzia with a second horse to pick her up for healing, because he wanted to make sure that she was fully rested and did not exert herself in any way getting all the way to the palace on foot. She said that she actually planned to see a different patient before she got to him, since he usually takes up all of the rest of the energy reserves that she has. So she suggests they meet at the castle, but he says he would like to escort her there instead. So she hops on a horse and they start to go to the first patient's home. And while they're on the horse, they have a conversation that sounds really random, but it does matter a little bit for the cognate history, I guess. So I'll just read brief notes of what you need to know. Chaol asks about the Kagan originally being from the steppes. Now, this is not like steps on stairs. This is Steppes. So this is an area in location. Yrene confirms that they were, and she says that she's even been there on a trip with Hassar and Caution. The first Kagan conquered the continent with only 100,000 men in 4 years. So the Cognate came from the steppes, and now they rule the southern continent. Chaol then can tell by the way that Yrene mentions the trip with like a bit of a cringe. He asks if that's where Caution confessed his love, and she says that's none of his business, but she does share that Caution was the first friend that she made when she moved here, so losing him as a friend was really, really hard for her. Tower of Dawn, Chapter 20, we have officially made it to the home of Yrene's first patient, and Chaol decides to stay outside on his horse. And his only job, according to Yrene, is to wiggle his toes as much as possible and try to retain as much control over the movement of his toes as possible while she treats this patient. So she goes in, he wiggles his toes for a good bit of time, and then when she comes out, he can tell that she's clearly upset. Apparently, the patient that she is treating has a really hard disease that's been a really long process to heal, but because of the patient's age, she doesn't think that he's gonna make it. Yrene offers to go to the castle, but Chaol says that he's actually having a really nice time not only being on horseback, but also just walking around the city with her. So he asks if there's any other patient she needs to see. So she decides there's one that she's gonna check up on. It is a postpartum mother, and thankfully both the mother and the baby are perfectly healthy, and Chaol can tell it definitely picked Yrene's mood up a bit to see a patient that's doing really well. After seeing the patients, they're finally heading back to the castle when Yrene asks if him and Nesrine plan to go to the festivities tonight. Chaol says that Nesrine is spending the beginning of the holiday with her family, and Yrene does actually sense here that Chaol is a little bummed that he wasn't invited to spend the morning with her family. And in Nesrine's defense, he did say that he wanted to spend some more time healing with Yrene, but you can tell that he was sad that Nesrine didn't even ask if he was interested in joining them. And then when she asks about the party later that night, he says, would it be the worst thing in the world if we just healed me through the party? And she says it would actually be very offensive to ignore the holiday. And anyways, Hassar gave her a dress to wear. And then shortly after saying this, she realizes what that dress kind of signifies to her, and it is Hassar bribing her to spy on Chaol. And the thing is that Chaol can actually tell that there's like some inner conflict with her. Like, I guess she makes a face or cringes a little bit, and he's like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And she just says she's fine, and they continue on to the castle. Now let's flash forward to the feast. Chaol is ready to go, enjoying wiggling his toes and in his boots in the wheelchair. Nesryn, of course, comes out of her room looking absolutely stunning, so he escorts her to the feast. And he is just admiring how no expense has been spared, and he cannot believe how elaborate everything is. And then Yrene enters the room. And Chaol, in his head, the first thing he thinks is that Yrene looks more like a princess than any of the princesses there. She looks amazing and stunning, but also he recognizes that she is a woman of power. She is the heir healer on high at the Tor. And remember, the Tor isn't exactly under the Cognate. So something that Chaol even notices here is that Argoon eyes Yrene like she is a piece of meat. Not necessarily because he's attracted to her in that sense, but if you think about it, it would be really advantageous for Argoon, who wants to be the next Kagan, to have a very strong alliance with Yrene. But much to Chaol and Nesryn's surprise, Hassar walks Yrene right up to Chaol and Nesryn, tells Nesryn that she can't sit next to her date because it's considered rude, and then has Yrene sit next to Chaol instead. Thankfully, although this is really awkward, Sartok steps forward and then gives Nesryn his arm and offers to escort her at the feast that night. So thank you, Sartok. Hassar sucks. Sartok is amazing, and poor Yrene is stuck in the middle of it all. Tower of Dawn, chapter 21. Chaol can tell instantly when him and Yrene start talking that she's definitely using some veiled language and sticking to small talk. So that tells him that someone's definitely listening to everything that they say tonight. So he is, going along with the whole small talk and vague speech thing. He can then tell the entire night that she is nervous, and Chaol, given the position that he had in Aelin, can already tell what's happening, so he calls her out and says, the role of pawn doesn't suit you. So that's crazy. Yrene blushes, but she continues the small talk, so he's like, okay, fine, I'll keep doing this thing with you. Towards the end of the feast, the Kagan goes up and leaves, and then apparently this is when the heirs start running the show because things start getting a little party-like. Now, man, I do not want to get demonetized, so I will do my best to describe this, but basically the entertainment comes out for the night, and it is a bunch of dancers in their birthday suits painted in gold from head to toe. Because I'll remind you that although in Aelin people are covered from neck to ankle, like they dress very much like period piece England type dress, okay? But here it's like, first of all, it's hot, so they're definitely a lot less conservative in how they dress, but nudity has never been an issue in the southern continent. They're all very open about that kind of stuff. So it's funny because Chaol is like instantly mortified and he's like, what in the world is happening? But everyone else is like, this is totally normal. Yrene, however, having not been from the southern continent, she's only lived here for 2 years, she totally understands why he's uncomfortable. To make things even worse, the room starts to fill with smoke. And this is not smoke from a fire, okay? This is smoke that is giving off a substance that alters your mind, okay? Like, man, I really don't want to get demonetized, guys. This is really hard. But let's just say inhaling this stuff is definitely going to make you start seeing colors, hearing sounds, maybe feel a little buzz, start speaking your mind. Okay, so this is the kind of smoke that's in the air. Because of that, Duva, the pregnant heir, she ends up getting up to leave, rightly so. Chaol immediately looks for Nesryn to see how she's taking all of this and can see that her and Sartok are actually sitting on a bench together, like as far back in the ballroom as they possibly can be, so they're not in the smoke and they're not by all the dancers and all that. But the weirdest thing here is that Chaol realizes he doesn't feel jealous. Interesting. Because they're definitely, like, over there in the corner having the time of their life. And he kind of, like, waits for that twinge of jealousy to come, and it never does. But he is snapped back into reality when Yrene decides to confess, because she can see that Hassar and all the other heirs are definitely very busy with the entertainment going on. So she shares about Hassar's threat and the information she needs. So she just asks Chaol to give her any location. Chaol says he really doesn't know where Aelin is. It's not even a, I wouldn't tell you if I knew. He's like, I genuinely have no clue where she is. However, if I'm going to give you a random location so that you're no longer under this threat, I'm going to give you the name of a place that I know Aelin would never go to. He remembers the story of what Selena and Sam did in Skulls Bay and how she was banished from the island by Rolf himself. So he tells Yrene, tell her that Aelin is in Skulls Bay. And it's so stinking funny because Chaol is actually so smart for this. But of course, Aelin just so happens to be going to Skulls Bay anyways, despite the fact that she's been banished from ever going to the island. So yeah, that's honestly, that's actually kind of crazy. So as they're having this conversation, I'll remind you, they have been like leaning towards each other to whisper this information because they really don't want anyone to overhear them. But unfortunately, because of all the smoke in the air, they're very up close in each other's business and they're inhaling things that are taking over their filters to not act on instinct and impulse. And they're about to kiss. Like, they're going in for it. They're about to kiss. Yrene, however, snaps out of it, looks over to where Nesrin and Sartok are sitting, and then storms out of the ballroom. Well, okay, before she storms out, she goes to Hassar, says Skulls Bay, and then she leaves. Chaol is sitting there being like, did me and Yrene almost just kiss? He watches her go to Hassar and tell her Skulls Bay and leave, and then he looks across the ballroom where Caution is sitting across the ballroom. Man, if looks could kill, Caution is staring Chaol down like he has seen his last days. At the end of the feast, however, when Chaol is taking Nesrin back to their rooms, he's wondering if Nesrin actually saw and what her thoughts are about it. Nesrin just tells him that Sartok is going back to his camp where all the rock riders are, and she wants to go with him. Chaol doesn't like the idea of her leaving and being gone for like a really long period of time, and then says like, since we've been inhaling all the substances we have been all night, I think we should sleep on this and then have a conversation in the morning. And Nesrin agrees that they should wait till the morning, and then they go into Chaol's rooms and they talk for the rest of the night. Chaol asks her how her family has been, and and then Chaol asks Nesrin how the morning was with her family. They went to the like sunrise at the river part of the holiday, and Chaol, in his inner monologue, tells the reader, like, I don't know how, I don't know why, but I could tell from the way that Nesrin talked and didn't really make eye contact and how she was definitely like emotionally detached during the conversation. I know that she saw me and Yrene almost kiss. Crazy stuff. Okay, we are going to jump to Empire of Storms chapter 24, but first I'm going to take a big sip of tea. So we're going to be in Aelin's POV, and thank goodness, because I feel like we haven't heard from her, Lysandra, and Aedion in a very, very long time. So they have actually boarded a ship because they have paid for passage on its way to Lurbia, and if you look on the map, the journey that they have to take through the Great Sea to Skulls Bay is like twice the distance that Dorian and Rowan had to travel. And after hearing Erewhon's threat to Rowan, Dorian's safety, we're in a bit of a time crunch, okay? So we are just trying to get there as fast as humanly possible. And while we're just on the ship waiting to get to our next destination, Aedion and Aelin have another heart-to-heart. And as you can probably remember from Queen of Shadows, they had a lot of conversations about how they really need to grow through and heal from all of the guilt that they've been giving themselves for years since the invasion of Outerlyn, because Aedion still blames himself because he was her sworn sword, he was supposed to protect her, and he wasn't even there. So Aedion spills a lot of the reasons why he still feels guilty again, and we know all of these obviously from Queen of Shadows when he listed them off there, but then Aelin says an interesting thing. And I guess this is just to kind of make Aelin feel better, to be like, yeah, I've got my own stuff too. Trust me, I can totally relate. She says she actually totally understands why Darrow doesn't want her to be queen. However, she's still going to fight to become queen. She's just going to understand that Darrow is scared of her becoming queen. Like, she understands why, but she is going to prove to him that she is the best queen that Terrasen could have. And the next step to proving to Darrow that she is the rightful queen is to start in Skulls Bay. Then, after Skulls Bay and catching up with Rowan and Dorian, they're going to continue on to the Stone Marshes to find this lock. And then finally, Aelin gives us a little bit more as to why she wants to see Ralph. Good thing Skulls Bay was on their way to the Stone Marshes of Eelway, and good thing that its ruler possessed a magical map inked on his hands, a map that revealed enemies, storms, and hidden treasure. A map to find things that did not wish to be found, so many promises and oaths made, so many debts and favors to call in. So this is where we learn, it definitely doesn't say it outright, but it definitely alludes to the fact that Aelin wants to see if his map on his hand still works so that he can use his magical hand to help them find this lock. And if you're confused because she wanted to go to Skulls Bay before she even knew that she needed the lock, that is true. I'll also remind you that she still needs 2 more keys, okay? So she's going to use his hand in hopes to find all the other Valg things that they need to put Erewhon and his entire Valg army back to where they came from. Empire of Storms, chapter 25. This is going to be in Manon's POV. Last time we saw her, she was passed out and dealing with a lot of blood loss from a very gory injury she took to her torso from her grandmother. Abraxos got her to the ground because she is finally waking up and she's realizing she is still bleeding. The first priority for her survival, of course, is to find water. So she is going to detach herself from Abraxos' saddle to find water. And then who knows, maybe after she gets her water, she'll then start to worry about the fate of the 13 and where they are, her apparent royal bloodline, the fact that all of Erewhon's witches are now hunting her down, and that she's apparently the answer to a centuries-old curse on the wastes. Well, I guess we'll figure that all out later. So Manon gets all the way down to the water when she sees a female on the other side of the stream. This female speaks to Manon, and Manon off the bat can tell from her voice that this is not just some human girl's voice, but she introduces herself as the Dark King's bloodhound. She has been kept under the mountain until now, and she has been brought out to return the Crowned Rider. Ooh, that's a new name for Manon. But then, this female thing on the other side of the stream, it completely transforms and shifts into something else entirely. It was just an illusion. She is not a female. She is a creature. And okay, I could not, for the life of me, find any art whatsoever of this creature. So I have the quote describing her directly from the book. So close your eyes with me and use your imagination, okay? The creature that stood before her had been birthed in the darkness, so white she had doubt it had ever felt the kiss of the sun until now. And the mind that had invented it, the imagination of someone born in another world, one where nightmares prowled in the dark, cold earth. The body and face were vaguely human, but bloodhound. Yes, that was fitting. The nostrils were enormous, the eyes were so large and lidless that she wondered if Erewhon himself had spread her eyelids apart. In her mouth, the teeth were black stumps, the tongue thick and red for tasting the air, and spreading from its white body, wings. So this disgusting thing lurches, okay? Lunges across the stream at Manon. But somehow, despite the fact that she is practically cut open in the middle, she makes it all the way back to Abraxos and they fly away right in time. But this thing chasing after them, remember, it has wings, so it starts to fly as well behind them. But Abraxos has a poison tail, and so he whips it with his poison tail, and they start to fly away when Manon passes out yet again. Tower of John. I'm so tired. Tower of Dawn, chapter 22. We're gonna be in Yrene's POV because she is debating whether or not she should even see Chaol this morning because she is so mortified about the fact that she almost kissed him last night. And she just tells herself, like, the substances that were in the air were no excuse. Like, that was so unprofessional of me that I don't even know if I can face him today to go heal him. Then she does mention that she's been to many of these celebrations before where this particular substance was put into the air, and she says it has never been stronger than it was that night. Interesting. Why would someone want the substance that was in the air that kind of fogs your brain a little bit? Why would someone want that so strong? Interesting. I think she decides, however, because she's professional, she's gonna go to the appointment anyways. Now, whether this is true or due to her paranoia, Yrene is convinced that everyone in the castle is staring at her and judging her. So she just plans to keep things as brief and professional as possible. So she walks as fast as she can to Chaol's rooms, bursts right in to see him and Yrene sleeping in the bed together. So now she's even more mortified than she was before and starting to wonder if maybe she was misreading some things the night before. So she starts to turn around and leave when she makes eye contact with Chaol, who I guess is wide awake. So she says she'll wait outside. So he quickly gets dressed and meets her out there and apologizes and says it was really unprofessional for them to be in that scenario because they agreed to meet at this time, so he should have been ready. And she offers to leave, but Chaol says he doesn't want to risk losing any progress, so he's like, no, please, let's do this. Yrene then pops her head out from Chaol's rooms and says that she has a lot of stuff to do, so she heads off to her room. Yrene is awkwardly standing there like, okay, like she's so uncomfortable. Like, can you imagine? She's dying inside right now. And then Chaol and her go into his rooms when Chaol feels the need. Okay, think about the implications of this. Okay, read in between the lines with me here. Chaol feels the need to let Yrene know that absolutely nothing happened. He reassures her that after the feast, they just started talking and she was telling him about her family, exactly where we left Chaol off just a chapter or two ago. And they ended up talking in his rooms and then they just fell asleep. And so I just think it's really interesting that it is so important to him that Yrene knows that. But then his eyes are drawn to something sticking out of her bag. It is a scroll. And he, off the bat, asks her where she got it. And she just says that it's a scroll that she was given when she was doing research, but she doesn't know how to read any of the symbols. And he's like, those aren't just any symbols. Those are called word marks. I told you guys to pay attention. I told you. When have you heard of odd symbols before? Word mark. But you knew that, didn't you? You're so smart. I knew it. So then she decides to pull out that other book, The Song of Beginnings, and show him all the illustrations that she saw in there. And then he tells her, he's very serious. He's like, I need you to hide these books and hide these scrolls immediately. No one can know that you have these. Like, this is the stuff that could potentially change the tide of the war. So they start hiding them under things, in between furniture, and then hides the word mark scroll in one of Chaol's boots that he isn't wearing. She asks if he can read them because then they wouldn't need to hide them. They can just get the information for them first. But he says he doesn't, but he knows someone who can. Obviously, we know this is Aelin. So she then asks him about Orcus and Mantix. And he's like, I don't know. They were either slain or sent back to the world. I don't really remember. And she's like, I think it's really important for you guys to know if there's 2 more Erewhons out there or not. Because if they weren't killed and they're just banished, who's to say Erewhon won't summon them? Honestly, I think that's an insane end to a chapter, and in turn, an insane end to this episode of the Tandem Read entire plot. So I will see you next week for part 8. In the meantime, you should definitely catch up if you have not already, and you should subscribe so you get notified whenever I post a brand new entire plot episode or a bookish video.